another episode of Tucker Time. Today, my plan is to play around a little bit with getting Tucker to move away from steady pressure. This is really important because when you're riding, most of what you're doing is asking your horse to move away from steady pressure, whether it is using your legs to move them, ask them to go forward, move them from side to side, control the hindquarters, control the forequarters. When you are riding with a bridle, whether it be a hackamore type or some sort of bit, that is steady pressure. So the better the horse moves away from steady pressure, the lighter they'll be when you're riding them. So to start off today, I'm just going to ask him to go backwards, I'm going to ask him to move his front end, and I'm going to ask him to move his hind end. Because he is what I would consider a right-brain introvert, they tend to be pretty light to begin with, so he's actually not too bad with the moving away from steady pressure. But I just thought I'd go over that with you real quick, just because it's one of the steps that I do when I first get a horse in and kind of start playing with them and seeing where they're at and filling in the holes. So I always like to start with just kind of rubbing them. You don't ever want to, especially with the nose, you don't ever want to just like go at them, because that actually will cause them to be a little bit head shy and want to avoid your hand. And so what I like to do too is I just hook my thumb underneath the halter and then rub their nose a little bit. And along the side of the bridge of the nose, there is a nerve that runs along there. And so what I want to do is I want to start off really light, like 4 ounces. And actually, because he's so light, that's about all I really need to do. And I'm just going to ask him to take a couple steps back. And then I'm going to start really light. And then, especially in the beginning, I might, apply the light pressure, count to 5, add a little bit more pressure, count to 5, a little bit more pressure, and then ultimately, whatever the amount of pressure it takes to get him to at least even go in the general direction that I'm asking. So even if he just kind of leaned back, if you have a horse that's more of a left brain introvert, they don't really like moving their feet, and they're pretty much like, you and who else is going to make me go backwards. So you might have to be pretty firm with them, where right brain introvert, they tend to be pretty light. So again, I'm just going to hook my thumb on the halter, I'm going to rub his nose, okay, and then I'm going to stop. And then also too, I want to have a little bit more intention in my body. I'm going to tighten my core. Okay. And when it's really good, you want it to feel like you're pushing a little toy boat across like the bathtub. Just really light, and it just flows backwards. Okay, and that was actually pretty good. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is ask him to move his front end. I'm going to get him turned around here so you kind of see what I'm doing. Okay. So to move his front end, I'm going to push on his nose just a little bit, because wherever the nose goes, the body will flow. I'm going to push a little bit on the nose, and then I'm going to push a little bit on his shoulder and ask him to take a step sideways. The angle of the shoulder right here, we call that the drive line. Anything in front of the drive line will cause a horse to go back. So when I push on his nose to ask him to go backwards, he's going to go back. If I push more on the front, like push on his side of his nose and the front of his shoulder, then that will help him to move his front end around. Okay? If I go to ask him to move his front end to the side and he goes backwards, that means I'm too far in front of the drive line. If I ask him to move his front end and he goes more forward, or goes more backwards and I'm too far, okay, I gotta get that straight. So anyway, if I'm too far back, I'm going to cause him to go more forward than sideways. So anyway, so again, I'm just going to push on the nose. He is a little bit evasive with his nose. I would prefer that he not wait until I touch him to move his nose, but again, because he's a little bit touchy about his head, that's a little bit of a confidence issue. And I could even just take the halter, push a little bit, and then ask him his front end to come around. Okay. So then for the hindquarters, yes, we're going to do the hindquarters. Okay. I'm going to use a little direct pressure here to get the hindquarters a little, facing a little bit better too, so you can see. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to work my way back to the hindquarters, rubbing my way back here. Again, because I'm trying to build confidence. Okay, let's see if I can keep him in the shot here. Okay, and I do want his nose tipped toward me. He doesn't need to be quite tipped that far, but he's kind of offering it, so I'm going to go with it. Maybe. Normally I would just kind of go with him, but I'm trying to get him in the shot so you can see what I'm doing here. Work my way back. Okay, and this little spot right here is a good spot to push on. So I have his nose tipped just a little bit, and then I'm going to push him. Okay, that was a little evasive. So I'm going to start really light. I'm going to tighten my core, and I'm going to gradually increase the pressure until he moves his hindquarters. He's still being just a little bit evasive. I'd rather wait for him to actually ask instead of, and anticipation is good, assumption is not good. So it's okay that a horse anticipates what you're going to do, but anticipation means he's ready to move, but doesn't go until you ask him. Assumption means he's just basically telling you, shut up, I know what I'm doing, just leave me alone. So we don't really want that kind of a response from them. Okay, so whatever I do to one side, I got to do to the other. We always want to make sure we keep them equal on both sides. If you want a horse to be able to perform well either direction, he's got to be able to do these maneuvers from either side. Okay, so I'm going to push on his nose, push on his shoulder, ask him to take a step sideways. And then I always rub him to a stop. A lot of people are not really used to giving a horse a little bit of space to move, and they want to ask him to take a step and then drag him back to you. You want to rub him to a stop. So even if it takes them a little bit of time to stop, you want to kind of go with them and just rub them until they stop moving. And then we'll move the hindquarters. See if I can keep them in the shot here. Work my way back, rubbing him. Okay, just want to get his nose tipped to me just a little bit, and then push, and then rub. Push a little bit, and then rub. And I'm not having to push very hard, I'm just barely touching him, which is nice. But again, he does tend to be a little bit more kind of evasive, which is not necessarily what I would like, but I think as he gets a little bit more confident in me, I think he'll be less likely to do that. So, anyway, that's basically getting a horse to move away from steady pressure. So thanks for watching.